Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, I'm Norma. I'm an alcoholic. I won't breathe on anybody. I really want to thank Mike for asking me to come down and participate. I didn't feel like getting out of bed this morning, but I had to go to work. I really wanted to just sit there and listen, because I really loved what you had to say, and you just said my whole story. You know, you just said my whole story. And I don't like to say I've been absolutely nuts, because I haven't really been nuts in a long time in my sobriety, but I'm just one of those people that sometimes, without realizing it, you know, I've taken the third step, and I took the third step very thoroughly and understood it, but there's times in my sobriety where, you know, I just kind of want to get in there, and I forget, and I try and control, and I try and do my will. And, you know, my friend always says when I'm a little out of my mind and things aren't working, it's like, what are you making more important than God? You know, she always tells me that, and it just really brings me down to, for me to stay sober, Alcoholics Anonymous keeps it so simple, and sometimes I make it very hard, and that is that when I wake up in the morning, you know, I ask God, what does he want me to do today? That when I wake up, I try and remember that I am here to be a maximum love and service, and that's really what I'm supposed to do today, and to stay sober and help another alcoholic. And when I can keep it that simple, I really have a good day, and people at work don't make me mad, and everything just goes fine. But there's some days where, and it doesn't happen as much as it used to when I was new, but there's some days where people just really irritate me. And but the great thing is I don't punch them out anymore, and I keep my mouth shut. So I know Alcoholics Anonymous works in the steps. If you're new, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I just really want to let you know this is the best deal. You know, I'm almost 12 years sober, and each time I talk, it really makes me reflect of what it used to be like, what happened, and where I am today, because the person I was when I walked in here 12 years ago, I'm not the same person. And you know what, every little once in a while I get on a little high horse, and sometimes I forget for about 2 minutes of what it really used to be like. You know, I don't look the same, I don't act the same, and my life is not the same due to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got here on May 27th of 1985, I did not want to be sober. I just needed the heat off. I was tired. You know, I was sick all the time. I had hepatitis, and I was wondering why I was always yellow. And, you know, I really loved what he said, because when I was 20 years old, the doctor said, you know, my liver was going out. And he said, well, how much do you drink? And I would always say 1 or 2 martinis a night. That's all that I would have, and I would have pictures and pictures and pictures, you know. I am what is described in the big book. I am an alcoholic, and I've thoroughly taken step 1. And I know that, and I'm really feel blessed that I know that that's what's wrong with me, because all my life I thought that maybe I needed to be in a mental institution. I needed to be locked up because of the thoughts and the way that I felt, and I knew that nobody felt like that. And for me, alcohol and drugs literally saved my life out there. It just saved me to bring me here to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I don't know what I would have done. If alcohol and drugs was working for me, I know I wouldn't be here. But at the age of 29, I was all out of answers, and I had nowhere else to go. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I really thought that, you know, I knew I drank a little too much, and but I really knew it was God's fault, it was my mother's fault, it was everybody's fault, and I never took responsibility for anything. And I always say that when it came to Alcoholics Anonymous, for many years, and just not when I was new, I had a V stamped in my head, and that was victim, and that was the only thing that I knew. That was the only thing that was familiar to me, and that was the hardest thing to do, was let go of that victim role. And I was able to do that and be comfortable through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I started drinking at a very early age. I really felt like I needed it at 5. I really don't remember my childhood, and I feel that God has blessed me. You know, they always say more is revealed, and through the years of my sobriety, things have been revealed to me, and I'm blessed that God has been with me and held my hand and has walked me through that difficult time. You know, I was put in foster homes, and I really don't remember that, and I don't know who my dad is, and what I heard about my mother is that she was, you know, mentally incapable of taking care of me, so the best thing that she could do was to give me up when I was a little girl. I was maybe 1 or 2. I don't even remember. And I was in these foster homes, and my mother died when I was about 5 years old, and she died in a car wreck. And I was supposed to be in that car that day. And for some unknown reason that day she said, I don't want Normie to go. They used to always call me Normie, you know, when I was little. And, you know, we got that phone call when I was in that foster home, and I was devastated. And I will never forget that day as long as I live. And that day is that I told people that my mother really wasn't dead, that they're all making this up, and that she just ran away because I did something so bad to her that she didn't want to be with me anymore. And I knew that she was alive. And I didn't go to her funeral. And they said I got really bizarre after that. You know, I started digging graves in the back of the house and putting little tombstones. So no wonder my grandmother drugged me to psychiatrist, you know. But I was to live with my grandmother, and I hurt my grandmother more than I hurt anybody out there. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I saw the steps, and I was really excited about step 4 and step 5, because for the first time in my life, everybody would really know what really happened to me, and they would all sob and feel sorry for me. I was so excited. And when I looked at 8 and 9, I thought I don't have to work those because I didn't hurt anybody, you know. And my amends list was, I remember my sponsor said I owe amends to the universe. So anyway, I found alcohol when we lived in Reno, Nevada, and I was about 12 years old. And I drank the whole bottle. You know, sounded good to me. I didn't know. I was new in town, and I didn't know anybody, and I met this bad girl at school that I really liked, and we went to her trailer, and I got drunk, and my first drunk was I blacked out, I puked, and I got a reputation, and I didn't know anything. I was 12 or 13 years old. You know, I never liked who I was. I'm Mexican, and I thought that maybe if I was white and had blonde hair and big boobs, everything would be fine. And I don't know where I got that idea from, but I didn't like my skin color. And when I was a little girl, I remember that my friends put me in a bathtub full of Clorox and tried to scrub my skin because that's how desperate I didn't want to be brown. And I don't know where that lack of self-worth came from, but when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't hold my head up high. And I didn't look like a lady, and I didn't act like a lady. And the women in Alcoholics Anonymous has shown me how to have dignity when I never had it before. I'm one of those people that took geographics because I always left because of the bad things I did, and I knew it'd be better in the next town. And I would do the same thing, and I'd move so I could start fresh. And you know what? I was blessed by God to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and start fresh and have another life. And but I lived in Reno, Nevada, and you know, that was when the hippie days were in. I'm kind of old. I know I don't look it, but the hippie days were in at that time, so I let my hair grow long. It was kind of brown, and I wore peace and the love thing, and dropped LSD and drank, and I was in seventh heaven. You know, I never went home. I never went to school. I was in the streets when I was 13 years old, and you know, my grandmother had to move because the cops knew me by my first name, and I was getting into trouble with the people. You see, alcohol and drugs came first before anybody else, and it made me feel good. You know, the minute I took a drink, the fear and everything left. I could feel it from the top of my head to my little toes, and the way that I always wanted to feel when I was sober, and I couldn't feel it because I found it in a bottle. And I wasn't willing to give that up for anybody. My grandmother had to move because I got in trouble, so we moved to the east side of San Jose, and I was about 14 years old. And here I am, Mexican, trying to be white. Now we're moving to the east side of San Jose, and there's nothing but lowriders. And I go to the school, and it's not a very nice school, and everybody has lowriders. And I think my second day there was a riot, and I knew I would kind of like this school. So I begged my grandmother to buy me a lowrider. I had a 1959 or 1960 lowered Impala tuck and roll with the little steering wheel and the pipes. And I dyed my hair blue-black, and I shaved all my eyebrows off, and I ratted my hair as high as I could rat it. And I was often running with those type of girls, and I used to wear false eyelashes. And I love this story because I didn't really know how to put false eyelashes on, and when you get drunk, you really don't care where they go. And, you know, I thought I was really cute because it was those long ones that spread apart and then the long ones on the bottom and the black eyeliner, and I would just look at myself and it would just be all over my face, and I really thought I was just the cutest thing out there. And, you know, when I lived there, I did everything I could to be as tough as I could because I was really scared inside, and I didn't want anybody to know what a wimp I was because I was hurt for a very long time. And my goal while I was drinking and even in my sobriety was to look as tough as I could and to keep people away. And I lived that way. When I drank, I always got in fist fights, and I always got in fist fights with 4 or 5 girls because I can't fight, and I would lose, and it was 4 of them. So, you know, I didn't look bad. But when I drank, I had a good time out there, and I was hitting the streets. One more time, my grandmother didn't know where I was, and I wasn't going to school, and I was hanging out, you know, in my lowrider, which got stolen, and so we stole another one, you know, because I'm a thief. I love to steal, and especially something that's not mine, and I love robbing houses. My friends would burglarize the houses and try and get the guns. I always went for the food and the alcohol, always, because that's what came first to me, you know. And I was in and out of juvenile hall. I went to a reformatory. They tried to put me in a girls' home, and I always ran away. Always ran away, and I really hurt and devastated my grandmother and didn't even care about her. You know, all I cared about is me getting loaded and being in the streets. I didn't care where I had to sleep. If I had to sleep under the highway, that was just fine with me. And when I was 16 years old, I was sentenced to a Synanon program in San Jose, and I wasn't a heroin addict. I was just a drunk, and I liked to take reds, and Synanon at that time was hardcore. You know, we had to really do some weird stuff there, and my grandmother had to pay for it. But I remember going to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting at 16 years old, and I remember that smoky-filled room, and I remember people taking birthday cakes, and I remember wanting what they had, and I cried because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get it, and I just wasn't ready to get sober at that time. And when I was 18, I got arrested, and for my first time, I went to jail, and I don't know about you, but that's where I find my friends. You know, that's where my friends hang out, and that's where I love to be. I love structure, and I love to be institutionalized because, number one, I have to think for myself, you know, and number two, you know, you can put as many tattoos on as you want. You know, I have some ugly-looking tattoos from Indian ink and needles because I told you I wanted everybody to stay far away from me because I was scared, and I wanted them to be scared of me. And so what you do is you dye your hair as blue as black and rat it and wear the longest eyelashes, and you tattoo your body. And I really, like I said, I don't have cute ones. I was like, I think 16 years old, and I was on reds and drinking, and I tattooed Tony on my arm only because I dated him for a week, and I really knew he was it. And I have you know, dots on my hands and cockroaches on my stomach. You know, when you're locked up, you get bored too, so I mean, you know, I had nothing else to do there. And you know, thank God I covered Tony with a rose, but and had some other ones taken off. The cockroach is still on my stomach, which is embarrassing when you have to go to the doctor. But and when I was new, my sponsor said I had to go. And I remember feeling so embarrassed at like 9 months of sobriety with these ugly looking things on my body. And so the doctor just looked at me, and I don't know about you, but when I was new, I liked to think about myself and talk about myself. So I told him my inventory as I was sitting on the table, and told him I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous and, you know, all this stuff. But, you know, my grandmother got sick, and she really got sick of me, and I remember that I really got into a lot of trouble, and I had to go before a judge, and he said, Norma, if I see you jaywalking, you're going to the penitentiary. And a couple of days later, I was right back in there. My grandmother just moved because she was tired. And you know what? I wasn't tired. Penitentiary scared me, but you know what? The woman that I stole from was my cousin's next-door neighbor who I lived with, and she dropped charges as long as I returned everything. And it was only because I met this man in the penitentiary. You know how you pen pal, right? Anyway, he got out, you know, and so we got together, but I knew it was kind of those people there, so I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I followed my grandmother, and I moved to Sacramento, and I just terrorized the poor woman. And you know, I was only 18 years old, and at 21 years old. No, I was 20. I was on what's called GED, and I was trying to get it together, and the only place I could work at was a massage parlor because I didn't have any skills at all, and I didn't have a high school diploma. And I was at the unemployment office, and this woman came out and said, "Did you know Pacific Bell is hiring?" And I was like, yeah, well, who cares? And she says, "I want you to go on this interview." Well, I don't know about you, but at this time I have fuchsia hair because disco's in, and I always follow the times. And I went on this interview. It was either still work at the massage parlor or work for Pacific Bell. I really could not make up my mind. But I went on this interview, and I don't know how I got the job. All I know is this woman said, "Do you love people?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I do." And she called me like a week later and said, "Would you like to work for us?" And I really had to think about it. I really had to think about it. And I made a decision to work for Pacific Bell. And at this time, I started seeing things that weren't there. I was 21 years old, and everywhere I went, I carried a bottle of alcohol in my purse. Everywhere I went, I couldn't go anywhere. Because when I woke up, I don't even believe I woke up with such fear that I always wanted to be white, and I was pitch white from the fear that I had every morning that I woke up. And that's when I started to become dependent on alcohol. You know, I used to tell my sponsor, you know, I used to see things that weren't there and hear things that weren't there, and she used to always say they were DTs, and I was like, "Oh no, I think something else. Maybe I'm mentally imbalanced, you know, something's wrong with me." But when I took that alcohol, I was okay. And I started working for Pacific Bell when I was 20 years old. I was a customer service rep, and that meant you talk to people all day long. Number one, I don't talk to people when I'm sober, so I drank on the job. And, you know, I'm going to be with that company 19 years. Come this year, and I look back, and it's incredible. You know, I really believe the supervisors really liked me there, and God, for some reason, decided that I need to stay there because I didn't come to work. I never came to work. They did a chart on me. I was never at work on Mondays, never at work on Fridays, and hardly came in on Thursdays, you know. But I held on to that job, and I got married in between there because I just thought it was the thing to do. He was gay, and he was in the Air Force, and it was a convenience kind of thing. And when I got sober, I just want to tell you I had a lot of secrets when I got here, and I really believe that you're as sick as your secrets. And I wasn't going to give up a lot of secrets to people here in Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew that they weren't going to like me because of some of the disgusting and horrible things I did out there. But I'm going to tell you something, when you're new and you hang out with newcomers that are just as new as you are, and you go for coffee and you start swapping stories, you know, I started to get pissed off because theirs was better than mine, you know. And but that's what I did when I was new, is I hung out with the new women, you know, that were just like me, and we went to coffee every night and we talked, you know, and that really saved my life. But anyway, wherever I was, my grandmother got very sick during my drinking, and she died, and I didn't even care what happened. I didn't even go to her funeral. And you know, I tried to bring this man that I married and showed my family that, you know, I finally am doing something, but they knew. And one of the biggest secrets I had when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous is that I lived the gay lifestyle at a very early age until I walked through the doors. And I was afraid that if the women knew that, when I tried to shake their hand, they would probably think I was trying to make a pass at them. And so I didn't want to tell anybody. But the only thing is when you look like I did when I was new, nobody asked because you already knew. You know, there was no secrets in the way I dressed, the way I talked, of the way that I lived out there. You know, I came here very angry, and I didn't like taking a bath, and I didn't like wearing underwear, and the shorter the little shirts were, the better I was. And when I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I walked, I jingled because I had every chain wrapped around me from my neck to my waist, and my hair was bleached blonde, and it stood straight up in the air. And I went to my class reunion, because we have class reunions, and we had to bring pictures, and I have a picture of me dated March 29th of 1985, 2 months before I got sober, and there I am sitting with the deadness in the eyes. You know, you could just see the deadness in my eyes with my bleached blonde hair, with my spikes, and you just know nobody's home. You know, I used to drive old-timers crazy because my hair was bleached blonde, and it was kind of orange and then brown, and I used to wear this white braid that just hung in my face, and I would walk around the meetings, and they would just look at me like, oh my God, I can't wait till she gets better. And I remember one person said it's going to be fun to watch her, and but people really loved me. You know, I stomped around, and when I was 30 days sober, you could hardly hear me jingle because the chains started to come off. And I used to wear little green cocktail dresses with fishnets to meetings. And I always wondered why no one asked me to date. I never got asked out. Never. No one ever asked me out. And I'm really grateful for that because there was nothing dateable about me. And people just waved at me and, you know, loved me from afar when I was new. And but anyway, my husband and me, of course, it didn't work out, and I thought LA was the place to be, and that was when punk rock was in. So I got into the punk rock scene, and towards the end of my drinking, I snorted cocaine and drank underneath my desk, took Quaaludes at 4:30, and I got off work at 5. Towards the end of my drinking, what I did was I came to in the morning and went to work because it was right downstairs. That was the best I could do. I would roll out of bed reeking of alcohol and thinking, you know, you brush your teeth and scope, and I would roll out of bed, run to work, and go to the liquor store, go to the connections house, go back to the liquor store, and come home. And that's what I did because towards the end of my drinking, no one wanted to be around me anymore because I wasn't fun. And there was just awful things that I did out there that no one just didn't want anything to have to do with me anymore. And so I weighed about 155 pounds. I was bloated, I had hepatitis, and I was dying inside. For me, alcoholism was a lonely disease because I would sit in the little foyer of my what's called the Piccadilly apartments, and I would sit out there waiting for someone to walk through the door so I could at least talk to someone because that's how lonely I was. And I went to my boss and I said, you know, I think something's wrong with me and I may need help. And I swear to God, all the managers stood up and started screaming. They were so happy that I admitted something. And I forgot about Alcoholics Anonymous, and they made me call this person, and this person asked me if I was an alcoholic, and I said no. And he said, well, we can't admit you. It was a detox center, which I didn't know anything about. And he said, I want you to do me a favor, Norma. He says, I just want you to lie. I won't tell anybody, just lie. And I said, okay. And that man saved my life. And I was admitted to the detox center in Hawthorne. And when I got there, it was on Memorial Day. By this time I had long blonde hair, and I wore green contact lenses. I was the only girl that was there, and I thought, oh my God, I went to heaven. And you know, they say don't get involved in your first year, but I did. He was 2 weeks sober. I really felt he was an old timer and he knew better. And I just remember him breaking up with me. How can you have a relationship at a detox center? 2 weeks. He broke up with me. And of course, I'm into drama, and I ran out of the detox center. I was screaming I was going to go get drunk because they did it to me one more time. And I remember I just stood at this tree and I said, God, please help me. And I haven't prayed in a long time. And I went back and walked in that detox center. You know, on May 27th of 1985, I was all out of drugs and I didn't know what else to do. And I've tried to commit suicide many, many times. And the only thing that I knew how to do was just to get on my knees that morning and ask God for help. And God answered my prayers that morning, even though I didn't want him to because I didn't know what I was going to do. What do you do when you don't drink? You know, you have so much time in between there. And I was confused when I was new. I went to CA, NA, AA, gay meetings. I went to a men's stag I always talk about, and they let me stay there. They never kicked me out of that men's stag. I didn't know it was a men's stag. I looked so mean, they just left me alone. And I didn't have a car. The only thing that I had, I didn't even have any furniture because I'm one of those people that I'm a runner. And I get up and I leave, and I never pack anything. I never hang curtains. I never get furniture. I don't do any of that. All I have is the clothes on my back, the clothes in my closet, and I'm a runner. And when I got out of that detox center, the best that I could do was go to work, scream at people, because I don't know about you, but when I got sober, I got pissed. I was angry. You know, there was a lot of rage in me, and customers really don't understand that. I wanted to say, you know what? I haven't had a drink in 31 days. You know, don't yell at me. And but But I got very angry, and the best that I could do was carry my big book like any good person would and take the bus. And I would take the bus from downtown LA to Hawthorne, and I did that every single night because I had nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. And I didn't get a sponsor because I was looking for the perfect one. I don't know where that came from. But I started looking around and taking notes, and I really don't think anybody wanted to sponsor me because, you know, I was really didn't, I just looked vicious. I wasn't vicious. But the old-timers saw through that and knew that the fear that I had, well, the anger that I had was the fear. I was so full of fear. And I found this woman spoke at a meeting. I asked her to be my sponsor, and she saved my life. She literally saved my life. I feel that God put her in my life, and she made me do a lot of stupid things. And one thing that she made me do is I was 33 years old, and I didn't have a high school diploma, and she made me go get a GED. And I told her, you know what, where I go to get this GED, there's a lot of bachucas around there, and they're 16 years old, and they're tough. And what I started to do was wrap my hair a little bit higher and show my tattoos so I could be as tough as they could. And she says, you know, Norma, why don't you just be an example? Be an example of Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't need to be tough anymore. And I got my GED, and she says, you can do whatever you want. And I went to school. You know, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I started going to college. And I felt stupid, and I cried every night because I knew that this wasn't going to work. And my poor sponsor, I cried every night after class, and she said, you know, Norma, you're not a failure as long as you try and you've been there one day. You know, give it a chance. And I got an A in that marine biology class. I didn't know what a DNA was. I had no clue of nothing, but I liked fish. I like little fishies. And she said, now, if you really want to be a marine biologist, I want you to take scuba diving. Well, I just want to let you know I'm not a marine biologist because I don't like the ocean. And but I'm going to tell you something. In 3 years of sobriety, I really didn't realize how much Alcoholics Anonymous was working, how I was able to walk in a room and how I was able to talk to people, not in a meeting but outside the meeting, and that my head was lifted high. I was no longer dragging my head, and I couldn't look at anybody. And I stood on that boat at 7 o'clock in the morning in the Channel Islands, and I didn't know anybody. And for the first time in my life, I was 33 years old, I felt equal. I've always wanted that feeling, and I got it at 3 years of sobriety. And then they made me jump in the water. But anyway, I didn't want to become a marine biologist because I don't like the ocean. And but I continued to go to school, and I got A's. And I thought, you know what? I'm ready for a relationship. I'm 4 years sober, right? And so I met this boy. I met him across the room, and I knew that we were to be married and have children. And I don't know about you, but I knew it was God's will. And so I pursued this boy. I was 33. He was 19. I didn't think age had anything to do with anything. And because I really felt we were both on the same emotional path. And anyway, I was dating him, and somehow I got pregnant. I called my sponsor, and I said, I really don't understand how I got pregnant. And she told me. But, you know, one thing that I love about my sponsor is that she's very honest with me, and she says, you know what, honey, I just want to tell you something. My hat's off to you if you want to have this baby, but I just want you to know and realize that you'll never do it by yourself, but do not expect this boy to marry you and to help you and to take care of this kid. And if you can do that, then I will support you in any way. And I'm glad she didn't say, babe, it's going to be okay, you're going to get married, you know, I'll be your maid of honor, and everything will be fine, because I would have killed myself, because that's not what happened. And I had to see him at meetings, and it was very difficult, because he was very cute. And I was going to meetings growing and getting fatter, and he really didn't want anything to do with me. But I'm going to tell you something. My little boy, who's going to be 7 years old this month, is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I believe that that boy was put in my life to have my little baby that I have now. And all I did was I really left him alone, and I did not slit his tires, and I didn't drive to Orange County and, you know, throw rocks in his house. I left him alone because, you know what, he had to deal with. And you know what, he's an active participant in Justin's life now, you know, and that's really by leaving him alone and really not making a scene and punching him at a meeting, and really acting better than I felt. And I don't know about you, but I don't like children, never have. When I was growing up, children and me did not get along. I'm not a mother. There's nothing motherly about me. And it was very difficult when Justin was born, because I didn't know how to be a mother, because I didn't have a mother, but there was a lot of guilt, and I told you secrets will kill you, they'll kill me, and there was a lot of secrets that I had when it came to my son, and I always fed him and took care of him. I never beat him, but I really believe negligence and dropping him off at everybody's house to get rid of him is abuse to me. And it was verbal in my house. And it went on for 3 years. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I was ashamed. But I knew that I didn't want to drink. And I knew I had to tell someone what was going on in that house. And I was able to share what was going on and how I couldn't love him and I hated him and I didn't want him in my house anymore. I didn't know what to do with him. When I was able to do that, I was able to have some type of freedom. And the most freedom I had was working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went back and I started working the steps. And I went to where my mother was buried. She's buried up north, because I'd never been to her gravesite before. And I went and I sat there and I took a picture of Justin and I read this letter that I wrote her, because I still had a lot of pain where it came from her. And when I left that gravesite, I cannot tell you how freed I was. I don't know where it came from, but I was free. And I didn't hate Justin anymore, and I didn't hate her. For the first time, there was nothing but forgiveness and there was nothing but love there. And today I'm really a good mother. You still want to hang your children, but I never knew that I would feel like this, and it was a lot of work, and I believe that God held my hand during this whole thing with him. And you know what? I love coming home from work, and I love picking him up, and I love playing with him. I love it so much that I isolate, because all I want to do is hang out with him. You know, we go to the mall together, and I have had to learn how to balance my life. You know, I don't have any girlfriends. I have a 7-year-old that I hang out with, and play Nintendo, and I don't play Army Men. I don't like it. But I don't know, God has just blessed my life. You know, there's a lot of things that I wanted to do, and one thing that I really wanted to do was to be a construction worker. I really like the hard hat bit. I think that's really attracted me. And I hated Pacific Bell. I cussed everybody out. I disconnected people's phones because they made me mad. And I told these people, meet me outside, and I told them where I worked. And I was really angry. And this is in my first 3 years of sobriety. So I had to tell myself for that. I don't do that anymore. I don't yell at anybody, but that's what I did. But I wanted to be a construction worker because Pacific Bell wasn't promoting me, and I hated customers. So my sponsor said, you know what, do it. And so I left Pacific Bell, and I went to Anza, California, to the labor camp. I was the only girl there, and I know why. And I called her, and I was hysterical because they made me take a test, a lifting test, you know, 90 pounds of bags of concrete, and they wanted me to carry 10 of them from here to there, back and forth. And as I was doing that and carrying 2x4s, bugs were getting in my mouth, and I was eating them. And it was hot there, and I lost all my fingernails that I just put on. And I called her, and I said, I can't do this. She said, Norma, you've been there for an hour. Why don't you just stay? And I graduated, and I passed every class because it was a pass or fail. And all I did was just did the next thing. Our first class was compaction. I was in a ditch for 3 days, and that's where all my nails ended up. You know, I had little Band-Aids all on my nails because my false nails kept coming up. And I would be in a ditch with the 90-pound whacker, and it did not like me, and I did not like it. And I couldn't get the thing to stay where I wanted it, and it took me all over. And but no one can see you because we each have our own little ditch, you see. I was sobbing in this little ditch and just cussing this whacker out. None of the men could help me because I couldn't pick it up and carry it out of the ditch, and they all just laughed at me. And but the amazing thing is I stuck through it, and I passed. And then I became a secretary. I wasn't going to go work hard labor. And my sponsor says, you know, Norma, it says in the big book here about fear. And I said, okay. And I went on an interview, and I was hired to be a laborer at the El Segundo sewage plant. And I did that for 4 months. I cried every morning in the portable potty with my mask on. and the men were not nice to me. It was hard. My foreman screamed at me 50 times a day, and I'm not exaggerating, because he wanted me to do stripping. Well, you know how, I don't know about you, but I was just stripping like this and taking things apart with the hammer. And he just started screaming at me, you know, that, Norma, you're not, you know, with your kid. I mean, just screaming. I'm going to tell you, in 4 months, he wasn't yelling at me anymore because I started to pay attention, but I knew that I didn't want to do that anymore because I really don't like hard work. And I went back to Pacific Bell with a new attitude. I didn't care what happened. I just knew I was to be a maximum love and service. And the amazing thing is I got a new job 7 months ago, and I got promoted. And I don't even talk to a customer. I work with all the repair technicians, and that's what I do today. You know, my life is simple, and my life is good. It is good. It's the best it ever been. And they always say, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. And I never understood what they meant by that, because I would sit on my hands knowing that I wasn't going to be able not to drink, because I love to drink. But I sat on my hands and I believed what those people say. Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. Just don't leave, and things will get better. It's not always perfect, and it's my alcoholic mind that sometimes just takes off. But when I look at everything, God has not given me anything that he has not handled with me. Not at all. He has done nothing but bless me, and for that I am ever so grateful. Thanks.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button. Swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.